This is a holdfast. It's an old traditional way of holding work at the workbench, primarily used by woodworkers, but you can also use it as a blacksmith at the anvil. The holdfasts are a little bit undersized for the hole they fit, in this case a 3/4 inch hole, and they drop in. They're wobbly fit, and give it a firm tap. That locks in good and solid. To release it, all you do is tap the back, and it comes right out. I make a variety of holdfasts, and year after year, these are one of my best-selling items in the shop. So as the holiday shopping season came on, I ordered a bunch of materials and needed to get to work on some holdfasts. So I thought I would bring you along, show you what a little bit of that process of doing a big production run looks like. And today's video is sponsored by FlexiSpot. For the woodworkers in the crowd, I'll give you a few little tips at the end of the video on how to properly use a holdfast and how to take care of it. Like I say, this is a production project for me that starts with the material selection. I'm using 11/16 diameter cold rolled material. Cold rolled is precise diameter, unlike hot roll that's a little bit bigger. So if I'm using a 3/4 inch hole in a workbench, which is most common, and I used 3/4 hot roll, it would be a little bit too big and it would not fit in the hole. You would have to draw that material down and make it smaller as your first step. And I've done that, and I'll talk about why I'm not doing that anymore. But the 11/16 is precisely sized 1/16 under that dog hole size. For 1-inch holes, I use 15/16 material. And I bought 10 20-foot bars of the 11/16 material for a 3/4 inch hole and 10 20-foot bars of the 15/16 for a 1-inch hole. Steel yard cut those in half for me, loaded them in the truck for me. Once I get it home though, it is up to me to unload that material, get it put in the bandsaw, and start cutting it down to size. I cut these down to 20-inch pieces, so every 20-foot bar gives me 12 20-inch pieces. I have a total of 240 holdfasts worth of material in this batch of steel. The total batch of steel ran around $1,400, so it's just a little bit less than $6 per holdfast for the material. Cold roll material is a lot more expensive than buying the hot roll material and then cutting it down to size. And at one point, I found some even larger than 3/4. It was something like 7/8 material in a salvage yard, still full 20-foot sticks. They got a big pile of it, still there today. I bought a dozen sticks from them several years ago. I've used all that up now. But I didn't go back to doing that because the process of drawing that material down to the 11/16 is very labor intensive. I was doing that under the power hammer, either working in a spring die that was mounted to the dies, and this one's kind of beat up and bent, and the mounting plate has broken off because they take so much abuse doing that for hundreds and hundreds of holdfasts. There's a whole lot more maintenance on your tools. I've also made saddle dies that bolted to the power hammer dies. This was a lot easier. I had one section I'd go square, octagon, round, and then a round section where I could round it up. This is actually the 15/16 die. Had another one for 11/16. Now, some of the other problems with this, besides having to maintain the tools, one, you have to make the tools, and each set of these dies is probably at least a full day in the shop just to make the dies. But then they do need maintenance. They need dressing. The mounting plates eventually crack and fall off. Welded up connections don't like being beat to death under a power hammer, even though it is functional. And these did do the job, made a pretty good holdfast. But the biggest thing is this probably took me, twice as long per holdfast to draw it out. Now that material was probably less than $1 per holdfast, so 6 times less expensive than buying the cold rolled material. I still think this is a better deal for me to work with, and I think that allows me to keep my prices lower for the customer, because in the long run, at almost $6 per holdfast for this material, that is the smallest amount of what goes into making a holdfast. The labor is number one, fuel, wear and tear on equipment, utilities, all the other expenses that go into making a product are much more significant than just the cost of materials. Now, I have seen a lot of other blacksmiths out there in the past that when their material price goes up, they use that as an excuse to dramatically up their prices to the customer. So if you're paying 6 times as much for the material, they say, well, my product is now 6 times more expensive. That's not really a fair way to price your stuff, because like I say, material is probably the most affordable thing that goes into a product. So even though this costs me 6 times more, there's so much less labor. Right now, I'm not upping my price on these. I may up it a few dollars next year, but I'll see how it goes. Not only can I make these more efficient and get more done in a given amount of time, I can make them more consistent, more regular, and the customer's getting a more refined product, and I think in the long run, it's a better product. One of the downsides to the cold rolled is it's very smooth. Holdfasts work on friction. They need to bind in that hole. If they're perfectly smooth and polished, they aren't going to hold very well. They're going to want to slip. So I do need to add texture. That is an extra step on these, but it's still way less time involved than drawing out that bigger bar. I use a needle scaler for this. It adds a very nice, subtle, pebbly texture. Not only does it make the holdfast hold better, but I think it looks better than leaving the perfectly smooth finish on an otherwise forged item. Before we go any further, I would like to thank the sponsor of today's video, FlexiSpot, and for sending out the E7 Plus adjustable height standing desk. Now, I have been thinking about a standing desk for years. I just haven't gotten around to making the commitment to buy one. So when FlexiSpot reached out to me and asked if I'd like to try one out, I was eager to do so, and they gave me a choice of which model I would like to try out. I chose the E7 Plus because it's a 4-leg standing desk. Now, I am not a lightweight person, but the E7 Plus is more than capable lifting not only the weight of the desk, everything I've got on the desk and suspended under the desk, but also lifting me right along with it. Has a 440-pound lifting capacity as well as the 540-pound static load capacity. And it's good and solid even at this height. Very little shake to it, super stable as it goes up and down. Very impressive. I think I'll take the elevator back down to the first floor. You can also set memory positions, so you can set your preferred standing height and your preferred sitting height for the desk. One button control, the desk goes up to where you want it. Push the other button, it goes back down to where you like it. And if you need to fine tune it, it's easy to fine tune anywhere in between. This desk has 3-stage legs. Not only are they more stable, but that allows it to go lower for the lowest setting and higher for the highest setting. This has a maximum height of 51.57 inches. There are a variety of accessories available for all of FlexiSpot's desks. I had them hook me up with a CPU bracket, so my computer is mounted under the desk. There are various drawers that mount to the desk, slide out keyboard trays, monitor arms, everything you need to customize your desk setup. FlexiSpot offers a 15-year warranty and a 30-day risk-free return service. They're budget-friendly compared to some of the other desks out there, which can cost you $1,000. This is considerably less expensive than that. The keypad, in addition to adjusting the height of the desk and allowing you to enter memory positions, also has a USB outlet on it, so you can plug something in to charge it if you need to. FlexiSpot is having mega sales now, and you don't want to miss out on the chance to get your own E7 Plus 4-leg standing desk. If you have a limited budget, you can choose the E7 Premium desk. Use my code for $50 off, link in the video description. As a socially responsible company, FlexiSpot also offers discounts to military, students, doctors, and more. Click the link below in the video description. But let's get back to making some holdfasts. Time to work on the other end. Another thing that really makes this possible is working with a power hammer to draw out the heads of the holdfast. I know not everybody has a power hammer, and I didn't have one for the first 15, 20 years that I was in business as a blacksmith. But the power hammer, again, allows me to make these so much more efficiently that I can afford to keep the price at a reasonable level. If I was doing these by hand, it would take me 4, 5, 6 times longer. What did I say earlier? Labor is the #1 expense in anything out of the blacksmith shop. So if I'm taking longer, that does have to reflect in the price. I would have to double or triple my price to be able to afford to make these entirely as a hand-forged item. And I don't think I have a customer base that's that interested in the hand-forged item. They want a good functional holdfast that does what it's supposed to do. First and foremost, this is a tool. Any aesthetic value you get from the forging is secondary to this needing to do its job. So a power hammer does that, and just in making holdfast, since I bought the same power hammer, I have probably paid for the power hammer at least twice over with the net income that the holdfast generates. So it is absolutely worth it for me anyways to own the power hammer and to have a product that really relies on that power hammer to get it done quickly and efficiently and produce regular, predictable results so that the customer gets the product they're paying for. Power hammer isn't for everybody, and everybody has to make their own decision in that regard. But for me, it really pays off, and everything else that I get to do with a power hammer that isn't a holdfast is just icing on the cake at this point. I use a very simple little bending form to shape these and then refine it at the anvil and set the contact point in relationship to the shaft of the holdfast. For the leaf end ones, the leaf is purely ornamental. It serves no practical function whatsoever. Matter of fact, if anything, it's probably more in the way. But for these, I want the contact point to be at the base of the leaf. The tip of the leaf would probably bend and it would start to flex and might crack around the transition. So I don't want the leaf to be where the pressure is applied. I want the pressure back here at the base. For the simple version that does not have the leaf, the pad is much thicker, and that's where I want even contact across the pad. That means this pad is a functional part of the holdfast instead of just an ornamental part. And I think in the long run, even though I charge a lot less for these because they're a lot less work, these are probably the better holdfast for the money. They both hold your work just as well. But again, the leaf is purely an aesthetic consideration, pure ornamentation, and doesn't serve a function, whereas the pad on this one does help hold the material. When the holdfasts have had a chance to cool, I wire brush these with a power wire brush. I use a variable speed angle grinder with a cut brush so I can turn the speed down. It's not as grabby, it's not as likely to throw wires. Make sure you wear your safety glasses anyways. That gets all the scale off of these. I do not put a finish on these, and that is a key thing to caring for your holdfasts. Oil or wax finishes are also a lubricant. They help prevent rust, but they also make this more slippery. And because holdfasts rely on friction, you don't want to lubricate your holdfast. To prevent rusting, you just need to keep them clean and dry. Some other things will help you get better performance. The hole size should be an exact 3/4 of an inch or an exact 1 inch. I've already taken care of making the holdfast just enough undersize that they should hold well. So the 11/16 cold rolled fits a 3/4 inch hole. The 15/16 cold rolled fits a 1-inch hole. Now, bench thickness or hole depth can affect the way a holdfast holds. If it is too deep a bench and too much of the shank is captive in the bench, it isn't going to kick over quite as far, and you won't get as much locking action on it. Now, probably still work to some extent, but there is a kind of a sweet spot there. I think between 2 and 4 inches is ideal for bench thickness. If you've got a 5 or a 6-inch thick bench, it's not a bad idea to counterbore up underneath. So you got a 3/4 inch hole all the way through, but you counterbore the last inch or two so that it's big enough that the holdfast isn't going to hit that as you go through. Of course, that's something that's easiest done when you're building the bench and you have it upside down, but you can do it from under the bench or flip your bench over and do that. And you might get better holding on your holdfast if they're slipping a little bit. You got a particularly thick bench to go ahead and counterbore. If you've got a really thin bench, maybe your bench is only 1.5 inches thick, and you'd like to up it to 3 inches, just put an extra strip of wood underneath where the dog holes are, drill through that, and you can effectively increase the thickness of the bench at the dog holes where the holdfasts go. Now, holdfasts are going to ding your work. It doesn't matter how smooth or how rounded the end is. If you're driving this into finished work, you're going to leave a mark. So it's a good idea to put a little scrap piece on the work and then set the holdfast, and you won't ding your work as badly as you would if you're using it without some sort of a protector under it. Now, wooden mallet or rawhide mallet is ideal. Dead blow mallet would work just fine, but I wouldn't use a steel hammer on the holdfast. These are 1018 steel or mild steel in a lot of cases, and while they hold up perfectly fine as a holdfast, they are not meant to be hit with a steel hammer. You're going to start mushrooming it over. It's going to work okay, but you're going to end up with a really ugly holdfast, and it'll start getting a little sharp edges and may eventually even chip and throw chips around that could pose a risk if the chip hits you in the eye or something like that. This is an antique holdfast that has clearly been hit with a steel hammer, and you can see it's all mushroomed over. There have been big chips knocked out of it, and those chips have got to go somewhere. So don't hit these with a steel hammer if you can avoid it. So wooden mallet, rawhide mallet, a plastic covered dead blow mallet, something like that, should be just fine. One good tap is often all it takes. Sometimes you may need 2 or 3, but it's not a whole lot of little taps. It's one good authoritative whack. And it's quite soul satisfying to do that. Anyways, that's just a quick look at holdfasts and how I approach this as a production item in my shop. They're a great thing to make if you just need a holdfast. They're not hard to do by hand, but it's a lot more efficient if you're going into business making holdfasts to have the equipment and to take a production mindset on it. And that applies to a lot of other things in the shop as well. But I've talked on long enough. I want to thank you for stopping by to watch the video today. Hope you have time in your day to get out to your shop. Make something, have fun, but stay safe. Wear your safety glasses. We'll see you for the next video. Once again, I want to thank FlexiSpot for sponsoring today's video and sending out the E7 Plus standing desk. But now, I need to get back to editing. Another thing that really makes this possible is working with a power